I'd like to call to order the June 13, 2018 meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee and ask the recording secretary to call the roll. Here. Thank you. We have several tasks before us this afternoon. We will declare one public member vacancy, interview candidates for two public member positions, and school board member and secondary teacher alternate positions on the Committee of Credentials. There's one vacancy for a public member. A second vacancy for a public member needs to be declared. So we'll do that right at the beginning. Two of the interviews will be conducted in person, and three interviews will be conducted via teleconference. At the conclusion of the interview process, the ad hoc committee will select individuals to recommend to the commission for appointment of public members on the Committee of Credentials, and may also select individuals to recommend to the commission to serve in the school board member and secondary teacher alternate pool as well. The commission will take final action at their meeting on Friday, this coming Friday the 15th. The committee would like to welcome the chair of the Committee of Credentials, Dr. Helio Brazil. Welcome. And he will sit with us this afternoon. This is, if not unprecedented, is at least unusual, but the members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask Dr. Brazil at or prior to our deliberation if he has any questions or anything that he would like to add for our information. Ms. Kendall is our staff attorney with us this afternoon. Do you have anything to add?
No, the introduction that you provided, Mr. Cooney, is consistent with the staff's recommendation that the vacancy be declared, that we select two members to fill those vacancies, and if possible, select alternates for the positions that are not vacant. Thank you. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I would just ask at the outset, do we expect all five of the potential candidates to be with us this afternoon?
We're going to have two physically with us and three teleconference.
As far as we know, all five
Yes,
will participate.
We have confirmation on all of them.
Okay, great. So the initial action we should take is to declare a public member vacancy. This resulted from the resignation of a public member of the committee. So who would like to make that motion or discuss it? Okay. I should introduce my fellow commissioners who are sitting with me today. I have on my left Bonnie Klatt. Welcome, Bonnie. And on my right, Kevin Kung. And so we are a committee of three today, and we'll be making our recommendations ultimately to the full commission. So we have a motion from Commissioner Klatt, and did you second? Okay, great. Any discussion of this item? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, I didn't hear anything, so the motion carries. So we now have two vacancies for which we can conduct interviews this afternoon. Our first candidate is Wade Steve Thorpe. Mr. Thorpe will be interviewing via teleconference for one of the public member positions. So we'll tie. Yeah, great.
Is this Steve?
This is Steve.
Hi, Steve. I'm here with the Ad Hoc Committee, and I'll now turn you over to our chair to get your interview started.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thorpe. I'm Michael Cooney. I'm chairing the ad hoc committee this afternoon, and I have with me two of my fellow commission members, Ms. Bonnie Klatt and Mr. Kevin Kung. And so if you're ready, we'd like to interview you for a public member position on our Committee of Credentials.
Oh, that's fine. Oh, yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Do you have any questions of your own at the outset about the process?
No, no, I sure don't.
Okay. Well, this isn't your last chance. If you later on have any questions, be sure and let us know, and if we can answer them, we will, or get the answer for you.
Okay.
All right. So let's start with Ms. Klatt, if you will. And if you can't hear her, we'll move this microphone around, but let's try it from here. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Thorpe. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. So our first question is, have you worked in a certificated position in the past 5 years?
No, I worked as an adjunct faculty member with City College for 14 years, and then I was a full-time faculty member there for 20 years, and I retired, and I'm an adjunct faculty member again, but I only teach one class a semester now.
Thank you.
Which ties into our second question with regard to the amount of work the committee involves. The committee meets 3 full days each and every month, and on a fourth partial day to prepare. So the question is, do you believe you can make this time commitment and review all the subject matter?
Oh, without a doubt. Like I say, I teach one class, and I can pretty much, the classes are scheduled for a semester's length, but the following semester I can have it rescheduled to the evening session, or even we have classes at 7 in the morning, and it's not that big a problem getting it rescheduled. I like to teach the one class because I like to hang around there, and it kind of gives you, I enjoy it, and so, I'd hate to give it up, but there's no reason I would have to give it up.
Very good. Okay. Kevin, do you have a question?
Yes. My question is, can you please tell us why you're interested in serving on the Committee of Credentials?
Because I'll be very honest with you, my wife's a school nurse, my son's been a high school teacher for quite close to 20 years now. I've always been involved in education. Prior to that, I was in law enforcement with the Sheriff's Department at District Attorney's Office, and retired from that after a little over 20 years. And to be honest with you, it sounds very interesting. And like I say, I enjoy teaching one class a semester. I enjoy being retired, but sometimes it just isn't enough to fill the hours. So and it can get pretty boring, So that's, to be honest with you, it sounds interesting, and I think it's something I would enjoy doing.
Thank you.
Bonnie, question number 4.
Yes. Do you know any of the current members who sit on the Committee of Credentials or the Commission on Teacher Credentialing? And if so, could you describe? Oh, looks like that's a no.
No, I don't know any of them.
All right. Thank you.
You've told us a little bit about your background in law enforcement and teaching, but the specific question is, which strengths or qualities do you feel you possess that would be assets in serving on the committee?
Well, I think that I'm very objective. I like to look at things from everybody's point of view, and Oh, and I've had a lot of life experiences. I've been around for quite a long time, and I think that I somewhat have a perception of people, and just the life experiences, the years of working, and and like I say, I really think that I kind of have a fairly good perception of people. So, I get along with everyone. So I think that's probably the strengths that I would bring.
Well, this is the committee's deliberations are similar to other things you have had in your professional experience, according to your resume. What I'd like to do is, with my fellow commissioners, pose some hypothetical situations to you and give you a chance to just, without any preparation, tell us how you would approach each of the situations. Okay? All right. So the basic scenario number one is an educator has 3 petty theft convictions in 1997, 1998, and 1999, respectively. On each occasion, the educator stole an amount less than $100. Now, the answer isn't so much what would your final judgment be, but how would you approach, what kinds of information would you like to have before deciding what to do with this educator's credentials?
Well, first of all, I would think that was a long time ago when that happened. And so I would wonder about the motivation that the fourth offense brought along. I tend to think that we should hold educators to a very high standard. But by the same token, petty thefts with a prior, could be a felony, not just a misdemeanor. But I would be considering those things and his motivation, what impact it would have on his ability to teach, what impact it would have on the students that he taught. I don't know. That would be a close one, to be honest with you. If it was something involving moral turpitude, well, I guess that does to a certain extent. But anyway, those are the things I would consider, and I guess that would be about it.
Well, that's fine for scenario one. We're going to change that just a little bit. Commissioner Kuhn will give you another scenario.
Okay. Here's another scenario. Would your decision be different if there were additional theft convictions in 2017 and 2018?
Yes, I think so. I think then you're dealing with somebody that has a problem that they haven't addressed, or it hasn't been addressed adequately or not. And obviously they've been given many opportunities for the thefts prior to that. So yeah, that would make a big difference. But then again, the motivation, if the guy was starving to death or something and he had stole food, or his kids was starving and he stole food, I doubt that would be the case. But yes, that would make a big difference.
Okay. Now Commissioner Klatt will vary the fact situation further.
Okay, and I think this is going to be an entirely new scenario. So if an educator was convicted of a single count of driving under the influence of alcohol in February of 2018, the educator had a child in the car during the offense, and the educator's blood alcohol content was 0.28%. So what would you consider in that situation?
The fact that he would have probably been charged with a child endangerment for sure. And many times when you have a situation like that, there's there could be an underlying drinking problem. It doesn't appear, most of the time that's not just a one-time situation. And to me, that's very serious with a child in the car. And I think it would be, very serious, the fact that he got into a car, period, much less with a car there with a blood alcohol content that high. So yeah, to me that would be very serious.
Okay, thank you.
Once again, a new set of facts. A male teacher appears before the Committee of Credentials and he admits that he's taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee of Credentials complaining of the teacher's behavior. So which of those factors, if any, would you be focused on?
Oh, I would be very worried in a situation like that, unless that guy could show a lot of involvement of other sources in the community to help that kid also. I would be very suspicious under those circumstances, but that's not saying that there can always be the legitimate deal where a teacher's really trying to help someone, but usually you can show that where the principal would know, or he would be above board with everything that he's doing, and plus he would have involved like Child Protective Services or other resources in the community, and if that was the case, then obviously, I would think that maybe he was legitimately trying to help the kid. But without all that, I would be very, very bothered by that situation.
Okay. We have one more. Commissioner Kung will ask.
Okay. Can you please consider a situation in which most members of the Committee of Credentials feels differently than you do as a recommendation of discipline? The deliberations indicate that 5 members oppose your recommendation and only 1 member agrees with you. How would you handle this?
Well, I would just simply run down why I saw the situation the way I saw it, and try to explain, my reasoning, and hope in an objective manner, and hopefully try to persuade them my way. But if not, you don't get everything your way every time.
That is certainly true. We could ask a lot of other scenarios. One of the things about the committee's work is there's always something new at every meeting, and it does test all of your experience and judgment. With that said, do you have any questions of us that we might be able to answer today?
No, I sure don't. I interviewed for the position once before, and I did, the researches of what it was and so forth back then, and I, like I say, I think I would enjoy doing it, and I'm certainly local. And other than some of the other things I probably left out is the fact that I definitely would show up on time all the time, and would be committed to it.
Okay, well, Mr. Thorpe, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking with you today, and we indicated, I think, before we gave you a call that the committee will deliberate after interviewing all of the candidates for the public member positions, and then make our recommendations to the full commission this Friday, and we'll notify you at that time.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be interviewed.
You are more than welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, the second candidate's here. I'm going to go out and get him. He's going to be here.
Okay. We'll start this way this time.
Just tell me when it's my
We'll
turn.
be completely democratic here.
Did they get these questions ahead of time? No. Okay.
No. This phone just ripped the plug out. Good afternoon, Mr. Elder. Welcome to the ad hoc committee of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. We'll get rid of that tone. Our goal today is to interview applicants for a position on the Committee of Credentials. And we have a public member position for which you are interviewing. And we will ask a series of questions, give you a chance to ask any questions you have about the committee or our work for that matter. And then we'll deliberate and make a recommendation to the full commission at its meeting on Friday.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions at the outset about what we're doing today?
No, sir, I did not. I'm ready and prepared to listen to the questions and answer the questions you have.
Great. All right. Well, I'm chairing today. I'm Michael Cooney, and I'd like to introduce Commissioner Bonnie Klatt and Commissioner Kevin Kung. And we'll take turns asking questions. By all means, if you need the question repeated or explained, just say so.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Kung, why don't you start?
Okay. Simple question. Have you worked in a certificated position in the past 5 years?
Not worked in a certificated position within the last 5 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Have you learned online or otherwise what the commitment you're proposing to make entails in terms of how many days a month and so forth?
Yes, I did do the research for the public member position in regards to the obligation and the commitment of 3 days per month to be here and be present to conduct a review of files of misconduct. So I'm well aware, and I did the research of, what the commitment is involving.
And that's every month, 3 days, plus an extra day where you pick up the files and prepare for the meeting.
For 2 years.
Yeah, well, for the month of August at least, so we don't want to go too far. But it is a very substantial commitment of time and effort. So I just wanted to see if you were prepared for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Can you please tell us why you're interested in serving on the Committee of Credentials?
Sure, gladly. I work in a men's correctional facility for the past 4 years, and I worked with the intellectual disability inmates in the education of our facility. And as I advocate for them in relation to education, I noticed that there was some things that weren't being done correctly, and those things were not fair to the student. And I noticed that it was the fault of the educator. And so that got me, being the criminal justice major that I am, seriously thinking about what contribution can I offer to ensure that people that are in the teaching profession are being held accountable for what they are expected. Because even though, these persons are incarcerated, the public, regular people in the community expect the same thing, especially for their children. And I know that if I saw this happening, I know that it is widespread. And that sent me to doing my research, because I know there has to be standards of conduct. And so that led me to find out about the commission. And I thought, well, that's definitely where I can, being a public servant, continue to offer my commitment to ensuring that fairness and firm and consistency is done for the benefit of those who are in the system, in the educational system. Yes, ma'am.
Next, Commissioner Coe.
Do you know of any current members who sit on the Committee of Credentials or the Commission on Teaching Credentialing?
No, sir, I do not know any. I did review the website, and I did see all of the individuals that are a part of the commission and committee, and none of those persons were recognizable to me.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We have some scenarios, hypothetical scenarios we'd like to run by you and just get your reaction to them. Assume you're sitting on the committee, on the committee of credentials, and so they're all a little bit different, and we'll take turns asking you. So
Okay.
the first scenario involves an educator who has 3 petty theft convictions. The years of the convictions, the respective years, were 1997, 1998, and 1999. On each occasion, the educator stole an amount less than $100. So which pieces of information would you focus on in your analysis?
I'm thinking on the timing. You said 1997. So I'm assuming that would be the current date of 2018 from when this, okay.
Correct.
Then I would look at, okay, everyone makes mistakes. People are people, and they're human. Not knowing the circumstances on this petty theft issue, I have to be, cognizant of the fact that, there hasn't been a pattern per se that has continued up until now. So I would evaluate them based upon, since there hasn't been a continuous pattern, to say that this is something habitual that is going to be concerning and ongoing, and it doesn't affect their profession. Their character it does, but not so much their profession. But if there's no pattern of misconduct in that sense, I wouldn't, hold that against their credential.
Okay. Commissioner Klatt?
I will change that scenario up just a little bit. Would your decision be different if there were additional theft convictions in 2017 and 2018?
Yeah, it definitely would be, because now I'm concerned because there needs to be some type of action on their part to correct that behavior, and in order to continue as expected to be fit in that position, you need to show that you've corrected that issue, that problem. We know that you are only human and things happen, and there's a standard of expectations that you know that you have to meet in order to maintain that credential. And if you cannot show or demonstrate that you've been able to correct that, then there has to be a penalty and a consequence for your actions. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Connell?
Okay. An educator was convicted of a single count of driving under the influence of alcohol in February 2018. The educator had a child in the car during the offense, and the educator's blood alcohol content was 0.28%. Can you please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential?
Wow, I would definitely recommend discipline because you're in a vehicle and you have another person in your care, and there's other people that are affected with your driving ability. There needs to be some discipline in order to make sure that this person's not, because their behavior is considered to be reckless and negligent and disregard for others and the safety of operating a vehicle, childcare. It's just, there has to be some consequences for those actions, because it's not right. You cannot be expected to, operate a vehicle or take care of a child in the safety and a manner consistent with a normal person in their daily life. So I definitely would, recommend discipline.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Completely different scenario. This is a male teacher, and he appears before the Committee of Credentials and admits that he's taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee of Credentials complaining of the teacher's behavior. Again, the question is whether that would cause you to take action against the credential of that educator.
Well, I'm concerned because the educator is not listening to the parents, and that's important. You can't disregard a parent's authority and their request in regards to that. So I'm going to make an assumption that there has been some discussions with that parent and educator to refrain from that type of behavior with their child. And if they haven't listened to that, then they're, in violation. And therefore, I would want to look at that and further on an affidavit because there may be some other issues that could be happening there that, you're crossing a boundary. And it needs to be looked at a little closer.
Okay. We have one more. Commissioner Klatt?
All right, the last one.
Yes.
Please consider a situation in which most of the members of the Committee of Credentials feel differently than you do about a recommendation. So if there were a situation where during deliberations 5 members opposed your recommendation and 1 member supported it, how would you handle that?
I would want to find out what areas of my recommendation are not clear to those members who are not in agreement with me, and I would give them clarity or more information to persuade them that we need to reach a consensus on this. So that's where I would work on meeting what they feel would be the threshold to get them in agreement with me. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Chelder, we have, did we miss one?
Yeah.
Oh, we skipped one. Let me go back.
Okay.
I was just about to ask if you had any other questions, but we have one more.
Okay, sure.
Tell us what strengths or qualities you possess that would be assets in serving in the position as you understand it.
I am a dedicated person, and I am going to give my full-fledged and commitment to making sure that I'm present and accounted for because of the importance. So my integrity and my belief in the system and my passion for teaching is all important. So that's what motivates and drives me. So I'm going to definitely be open and listening to what everyone has to say and offer valuable information and insights from what I know and my experiences that I feel would be beneficial.
Okay, well said.
Thank you.
Do you have questions now? I think we've exhausted ours.
Oh, okay. I had not actually had any questions because pretty much all the information has been provided to me by either my research or by a Kristen. So I would, probably be, once in the position, better able to ask you a lot more questions, definitely.
Of course. Well, I think we've brought out from you the things that are most important to us. So we will be deliberating this afternoon and making recommendations to the commission on Friday, and then you'll be notified.
Fine. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for coming all the way here
All of
today.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is.
So we just need to scoot
Yeah,
down
because
one.
once it's a phone, we can switch back to that
Okay.
like that because we can one camera and
There's multiple.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Scotty Bird.
That's who's next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oakland, so he may be stuck in traffic. So we're going to go ahead and move to the school board member alternate, and then I'll run up and check my email and my voicemail. Was it? Okay. Okay, so you want to go to the school board member questions. You guys ready? Yeah.
John Fernando. I'm unable to answer the phone right now. Hi, you've reached Ro-
Want to take a break, Krista? Or?
You want to? His time was 5, so but the letter said to be ready 20 minutes before and
Oh, that's
after.
all right.
Would you guys like to take a break and I'll go run and check my computer?
Yeah,
That's fine.
that's good.
Okay.
I don't-
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, well, our next candidate is on the road apparently and delayed, so we're going to take a few minute break and then we'll reconvene. Not later than 5 minutes before 5. Thank you. And I have two of our commissioners with me today, Bonnie Klatt and Kevin Kung. And our job is to interview candidates for various positions on the Committee of Credentials, which I'm sure you've learned about. And then we'll make a recommendation to the full commission on Friday when the commission meets. Realizing you've been driving in traffic and everything else, we've got some gentle questions to ask you. But before we start, are there any questions you have about the position or otherwise?
No, I think I've read everything fairly thoroughly. No questions right now.
Okay, perfect. Well, Commissioner Klatt, would you like to start?
Sure. We will start with an easy one, as Michael said. Have you worked in a certificated position at any time in the last 5 years?
No, I have never been in a certificated position.
When does your current term on the school board expire? Oh, we got the wrong one. Sorry, we have 3 sets of questions, and I had the wrong list. Okay, we're back to that.
Why don't I ask the second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Next question. The Committee of Credentials meets 3 full days a month with a fourth partial day for preparation. The committee reviews educator misconduct cases to determine whether to recommend discipline on an educator's license. Do you believe that you can make this time commitment and review the subject matter?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Bird, tell us why you're interested in serving on this committee.
Thank you. Well, I have been working in education for the past 12 years in human resources roles where I have either been directly involved in the hiring of teachers and evaluation and ensuring their credentialing or supervising those who do that. And I have a strong commitment to ensuring that California's public school teachers are the best and the brightest, but also that they are fully qualified. Having participated in those roles over the last 12 years in very few, but a few instances of teacher discipline, I became aware on the employer side, if you will, on the school side, of all that is required as far as reporting to the commission when there's discipline based on a teacher's conduct. And going through that process initially in 2008 for the first time, I gained a great deal of respect for the process and what the commission endeavors to do. And at this point in my career and with the charter management organization I work for, I feel that it's a good time for me to give back on the knowledge that I've gained over the 12 years and to contribute in a larger role even outside of my organization.
Okay, Ms. Klatt, why don't you take the next one?
Another easy one here for you. Do you know any of the current members who sit on the Committee of Credentials or the Commission on Teacher Credentialing?
No, I do not.
What strengths or qualities do you believe you possess that would be assets in serving on the committee? We know about your school board experience, but we're looking beyond that.
Sure, and I think I understand your question. I have not served on a school board, but I do currently work for a charter management organization managing 36 charter schools in California and 4 in Tennessee. As far as special skills that I could bring to the committee, a thoroughness in research and in understanding of the law. Again, 12 years of experience, either directly involved in ensuring teacher discipline is carried out in the correct way or supervising those who did, as well as either directly involved or supervising those who were involved in the hiring of teachers in my organization. Also, just a sense of urgency. I'm aware of the backlog currently in teacher discipline cases that are being investigated and up for review, and a sense of urgency around being able to quickly read through the materials and help make a recommendation.
Sure.
So we're going to ask you a bunch of scenarios. For each one, can you please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential? So the scenario is an educator has 3 petty theft convictions in 1997, 98, and 99. On each occasion, the educator stole an amount less than $100. Again, would you close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential?
I would close the matter.
Okay.
Could you elaborate and tell us what your analysis would be?
Certainly. The crimes having happened, as I understood the dates, within 20 years or so ago, the crimes being of a misdemeanor, petty theft, and also being of an amount that is so low. My recommendation to close would be based on this has little bearing on the person's current character in 2018.
So if we change this scenario and said there were additional convictions in 2017 and 2018, your answer would be different?
It would, based on what the convictions were for.
It would be different.
Sorry, my recommendation would be different if there were more recent convictions, but again, based on what those recent convictions, what crimes those recent convictions are.
Yeah, we were assuming still less than $100 petty theft as opposed to bank robbery or something like that.
If it was the exact same crimes, but again with the recency, unfortunately I can't give an answer off the top of my head. I'd have to consult the regulations and the policy book because being a petty crime and being what I'm assuming is still a misdemeanor in 2017, I would have to look before I leap and give you an answer on that one.
Okay.
All right, we're going to start with an entirely new scenario. So in this scenario, an educator was convicted of a single count of driving under the influence of alcohol in February 2018. The educator had a child in the car during the offense, and the educator's blood alcohol content was 0.28%. So what would you consider in that situation?
And forgive me, repeat the choices
of
of my
course,
recommendations.
So you could either just close the matter or you could recommend discipline.
I would recommend discipline in that instance.
Could you explain kind of your thought behind that?
Yes, as I understand the crime that you described to me, that would be a felony. And as I understand the regulations, California precludes convicted felons from being with school children or specifically working within our public schools.
Okay, I have yet a different scenario. A male teacher appearing before the Committee of Credential admits that he has taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee of Credentials complaining of the teacher's behavior. Again, please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential, and can you explain your thinking?
Thank you. I just want to clarify the scenario you just described does not involve any conviction or arrest. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Given the scenario, I would recommend discipline. My reasoning being it would appear from the evidence that you just presented that the teacher has been using a position of influence and power and exerting that over the student in order to gain some type of a relationship that would go outside the bounds of a student-pupil, a student-teacher relationship. And also given that the parents, I'm assuming the guardians, have actually lodged a complaint about the behavior and its effect on the child, I think that it's fairly clear at that point that the teacher has stepped outside of the bounds.
Thank you.
So you're sitting on the committee, and you've recommended, because you were given the case to review, you've recommended a particular action. And you have one of the other committee members agree with you, but 5 of them don't. And the question is, how would you proceed in those circumstances?
Thank you. I believe in a scenario like that, I would recheck to make sure that I had drawn my conclusion based on the data, based on the facts that are being presented. And I would, of course, try to diplomatically persuade other committee members to view the data the same way I am viewing it. Ultimately, if in my conscience I can't draw a different conclusion with that data, I would stand firm with my decision. If either re-examining the data, I can on my own determine that I had made a mistake in the conclusion that I had drawn, or if my other committee members are able to persuade me with additional facts and additional data, then of course I could be persuaded to change my opinion at that point.
Very good. Okay. Well, those are our questions initially, and if you have any of yours, you're welcome to ask about our process or about the committee's position.
I don't have any questions on that, but obviously my curiosity is piqued, and so I'm hoping at some point, maybe regardless of your recommendation, maybe staff will let me know how I did on those answers, because they were fairly technical and engaging. I appreciate that.
Oh, we certainly will let you know about our recommendation to the commission, and it, in full session on Friday, we'll make a decision on your application. And regardless of that, we very much appreciate you making the effort to come all the way up here and spend time with us. And best of luck.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, committee, we have 2 more interviews. Both will be by teleconference. Well, before we make the call? Sure.
Okay.
Sure, that's fine. We've heard from 3 candidates, 2 in person, 1 on the phone. We have 2 vacancies. There's no obligation to make a recommendation to fill both vacancies. And I would like to offer the chance to Dr. Helio to give us his impressions of the candidates.
First, I appreciate the fact that this is kind of not a normal process for the chair to come and to sit through this. Excuse me. My only concern, and that of the entire committee, has been the time commitment. Truly, we want to make sure that there are individuals who are willing to make all of the meetings, be prepared and well-versed in the materials. And I think, obviously, the rest is getting along with a larger group, but I was very impressed with all 3 candidates. I think that the first candidate certainly has the knowledge and background that would be very beneficial to the committee and to serving kids. But I think all 3 of them, I can't think of a reason why I wouldn't want to work with any of them, to be very honest, or that the committee would think would not be appropriate.
Very helpful. Thank you very much. Okay. Commissioners, any initial thoughts on those candidates? Why don't we go through them one at a time?
Can I ask a process question?
Sure.
I'm just curious if the process, are we, sorry. I'm just asking a question about process. Are our deliberations here on record? So we're still part of the record. Okay, I just wanted to just clarify that. We're still in a public meeting. Okay, thank you. And I guess then I would start by echoing our chair in that I think all 3 have strong qualifications, and all 3. I don't see They all three seem like that they could serve, and they all bring strengths, I think, to the position. So I think it will be a difficult decision to have to narrow it down to two.
Any overall comments before we get specific? Commissioner Kung?
Again, I also agree that all three candidates are strong candidates. Though if I had to choose, because we will have to choose at one point, I think getting another perspective, this is a public member, someone from different backgrounds. I think I would like to see Mr. Thorpe, the first candidate, on the Committee of Credentials, because I think he would bring his experience in law enforcement. I think that would be a good background on the Committee of Credentials.
Absolutely.
I think to add to that, and for similar reasons, I think Mr. Elder, coming from it seemed like he had some unique experiences also, and his work with students in a different setting than what we're typically working with. I think he would bring some good experience to that too.
Well, as an overall observation, all of the candidates had they came from different positions. The most recent, Mr. Bird, has been working in a private charter school as an administrator, really, and the other two have different backgrounds. So Mr. Elder is working within the context of prison population, and Mr. Thorpe has extensive law enforcement background, but has also been a community college teacher for years and continues to do that, I think, out of interest and a commitment to do good work. So, I think it's the committee would be enriched by any or all. We have 2 vacancies, and it would be great if we could fill those 2, and then we would have the opportunity to designate the 3rd as an alternate. Okay, so you would put as definitely one of the open positions and qualify Mr. Thorpe for the first of those.
That is correct.
Okay, well, I was impressed by him. We didn't get to visit with him in person, but considering it was over the telephone, I thought he answered all of the questions that we asked deliberately and thoughtfully, and, considering he hasn't had an experience like serving on the committee, I thought he would fit right in with that situation as well. So if we could treat Commissioner Kung's preference as a motion, I would second it and ask if we can vote on that for one of the vacancies. Would you like to discuss it before we did?
I could support that as a motion.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to recommend Wade Steve Thorpe as a candidate for a public member vacancy indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that's unanimous. We have one more vacancy to fill if we feel one of the candidates meets the requirements. As between Mr. Elder and Mr. Bird for those positions. Bonnie, how do you feel?
Like I said, it's a really tough decision. I think either one of them would serve the committee well. I think I'm slightly inclined to move for Mr. Elder. But again, that's a slight. I think both of them were very strong candidates.
Kevin?
This is also a hard decision for me because, again, both of them are strong candidates. Between those two, actually, I would recommend Mr. Byrd. But I'm happy. They're both strong candidates. This is a difficult decision, but I would recommend Mr. Byrd.
And either way it goes, I'm kind of glad that we have a little bit of, I think it speaks to the quality of the candidates that we're having difficulty around this.
I agree with both of you that this is a difficult decision. In terms of first impressions, and really that's all we get. We've read their resumes and we've seen the backgrounds, but in terms of responding to our questions, both of these gentlemen were here, and we asked questions about interacting with others. I thought to distinguish them that Mr. Byrd was very careful to understand the question, begged off answering one until he could review regulations. I worry a little bit about that sort of rigid approach as opposed to being more collegial, which essentially you must be in that room. You're together an awful lot every single month. So I'm projecting a bit. I think both are qualified. Either could do the job. I'd like whichever one we don't choose to be recommended as an alternate for a vacancy, so we don't get into the position of desperation for committee membership. But I'd prefer if the two of you could agree on who you would recommend for the vacancy, and I'll support you.
You want to go?
I'll maybe explain my thinking a little bit, and then you can explain yours maybe, and we'll try to come to some consensus. I think I appreciated about Mr. Elder how he spoke through his thinking on the scenarios, that it seemed like, the cases that come to the committee are so complex and so unique, as I think you pointed out. And I just appreciated the insight he gave us as he talked through his answers. Now, to sort of argue against myself, I think that Mr. Byrd, in some ways, having that decisiveness might come in handy with the volume and being able to get through cases. So perhaps there is something to be said for that. But I appreciated Mr. Elder really kind of taking the time to walk through step by step and really try to think about the different perspectives on each scenario.
Okay, and why it's a hard decision. Again, either way, I think the committee credentials would benefit either way. But I suggested Byrd because, yes, he was decisive, and I think it's because he has experience working in HR with schools that he already, to me, understood, like, okay, it's going to go this way. When we prodded him, like, oh, can you explain? He did answer, but I think the question, would you recommend, I forget the wording, but to like pass or recommend discipline on this, he just quickly answered, X. And again, he did give his explanation after we asked. So I think he just answered it quickly again because he knew, having the experience with teachers or educators on the HR side, he has, I guess you can say, background in this.
Can I ask another process question? Can we ask Dr. Brazil, since he's here, since we're at a bit of an impasse? Are we able to do that?
Well, I'd prefer the question to Dr. Brazil to be what factors between the two gentlemen he considers to be important without indicating which of the two he would prefer, and because that's ultimately the commission's decision, okay. And we don't want to delegate that.
Okay.
I think, again, the major concern that I would have as the chair of the committee on behalf of the committee is the fact that we want someone who is going to be committed, who is going to attend regularly, who's going to be someone who will be fair and objective and look through the material and really be able to work together. What we want are someone who is not afraid to voice their opinion. We're a very different group in the sense that we all value and work together on cases, in the sense that we each leave every day feeling like we've said what we needed to say and we've agreed to disagree. And I think both of those gentlemen depicted those qualities. So I don't have anything that I would say is something of a negative in either of those candidates. I'm rather quite impressed that this is the caliber and it's what we should have on that committee. So,
well, I might say there is tremendous quality on the committee, so we're anxious to add to that, not to subtract. Okay, it looks like we're very close, but falling separately. So why don't well, we can dispense with the separate motions. I'll just say I'm kind of leaning toward Mr. Byrd because of his experience that I think would be helpful to the committee. It wouldn't hurt to have someone involved in this decision making that represents an important part of our educational system in the charter schools. So I think I'd slightly lean for him to be to fill the vacancy remaining, and then quickly follow with Mr. Elder as an alternate, with the hope that he would become a member of the committee at some point.
I could very happily support that motion. Like I said, I was very torn, so I would happily support the nomination of Mr. Byrd and Mr. Elder as the alternate.
So that's the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Great. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so to our council, we have dealt with both candidates then with that motion, and we'll make that recommendation to the full commission on Friday. Okay? We have two other alternate positions for consideration today, and both of these candidates will be interviewed by telephone. We're a few minutes behind schedule, but I think it was good to get our thoughts down before we took on these calls. The first candidate is Mr. Rukshan Fernando. He is a school board member now, and we have separate questions for him. Yep. Oh, there she is.
This is Roshan.
Hi, this is Kristen with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm here with the ad hoc committee, and are you prepared for your interview?
Yes.
Okay, I'll turn you over to them now.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Fernando. This is Michael Cooney. I'm the chair of the ad hoc committee. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Two of my fellow commissioners are here to speak with you, Commissioner Bonnie Klatt and Commissioner Kevin Kung.
Okay, great.
And we have a series of questions that we would like to ask you having to do with the position. But before we start, I invite you to ask any questions you have of us, either our process of recommending to the commission or about the position itself.
Just to get a general question about after this interview is completed, what are the next steps in the process?
We're meeting today ahead of a two-day meeting of the commission, and the agenda for this item, our recommendation to the commission, will be on Friday. I'm not sure exactly when, but it will be this week, and then all the candidates will be notified of the commission's decision.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start with Commissioner Kung this time for the first question.
Okay, it's a easy question. Have you worked in a certificated position in the past 5 years?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Klatt?
All right, another easy one. When does your term expire on the school board?
My school board terms I think it's 2021.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Fernando, you have undoubtedly familiarized yourself with the basic functions of the committee, but it is such an important and valuable part of the educator discipline process that we want to be sure you're able to commit to the time required. You understand that the Committee of Credentials meets 3 full days each month, and on a 4th day spends time reviewing the cases. And these are sometimes complicated, always important misconduct cases. Do you believe that you can make that commitment at this point?
Yes, I believe I can make that commitment. I just had a question, if that's okay, regarding the number of alternate school board member positions there are on the commission.
Oh, I think it's a good question. Let me ask our counsel if she knows. Are there other alternates for the school board position?
No, there's no alternates currently. If we have an ongoing recruitment process, so that if other candidates who are school board members choose to apply, and then there is an opportunity to have another ad hoc meeting, the ad hoc committee could recommend to the commission to add additional alternates. But at this point, we have one serving member and no alternates.
I don't know if you could hear that, Mr. Fernando.
I'm sorry. No, I must be getting old.
No. We're spread out around a room,
yeah.
And so I'll just repeat the answer Ms. Kendall gave, which was right now we have one serving member who is a school board member and fills that position. We have no alternates. That's not to say that there couldn't be alternates added.
Okay.
That's on future time.
Okay.
So back to the basic question, did you have a chance to answer in terms of your willingness to make the commitment if you were appointed?
Yes, I'm willing to make that commitment.
Commissioner Klatt?
Yes, could you please tell us why you're interested in serving on the Committee of Credentials?
Well, I think that my experience, not necessarily in public education, but in higher education, because I do review personnel issues, I do review student personnel and student issues regarding grievance and academic integrity issues. I'm familiar with the process of discipline, at least in the higher education context. And now that I am a school board member in Glendora, I'm looking to serve, not just my own local community, but a broader community, helping to make sure that, certificated personnel, that we have the best certificated personnel in our schools, and that as we go through the decision-making process regarding a disciplinary case, that we handle that in a prudent and sort of procedural manner. And given the fact that I've experienced these procedural, processes in the higher education world, I look to translate those processes within the context of, the policies that are embedded in the CTC. So also, just again, it's another way to serve my community and serve the state of California.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cohn?
Do you know any of the current members who sit on the Committee of Credentials or the Commission on Teaching Credentialing?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
You kind of answered this in your last answer, but what personal strengths or qualities do you possess that you would consider valuable to the committee?
Well, coming from a background and discipline of social work, where there is licensure and where there are consequences when somebody engages in unprofessional or unethical behavior based on our social worker code of ethics, that's something that I have taught at the undergraduate and graduate level in our School of Social Work here at Azusa Pacific University. And so, I understand the need for professionals that are under a certain code of ethics to live by that code of ethics, and then there are consequences when, a licensed clinical social worker does not carry that out in a client setting. And so in the same way, in the educational world, there's education code, which dictates the parameters of teacher behavior and teacher professionalism. And so I look forward to engaging in those policies and educational codes as we consider those cases that come before the CTC.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Klatt?
All right, next, we'd like to give you some scenarios, and for each scenario, we're going to ask that you discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credentials. So if you can kind of explain your thought process for each of these scenarios. So the first scenario, an educator has 3 petty theft convictions in 1997, 1998, and 1999. On each occasion, the educator stole an amount less than $100. Can you explain what you would consider in that situation?
And the 2 options were, I'm sorry, I want to make sure that I'm responding correctly.
Yes, one option would be to close the matter and dismiss it, or recommend discipline on the educator's credential.
Okay. So for that case, because the amount of money being stolen is of a small value and that it's a petty, I think you mentioned petty crime, and that if we're talking about 2018 and it's 1997, 1998, and 1999, in that situation, given the length of time and the amount of money, I would close the matter.
Okay, thank you.
Would you change your view if, in addition to those 3 original petty thefts, the educator had been convicted of separate thefts in 2017 and 18 also?
Yes, because then there is a pattern of behavior that is of, a recent pattern of behavior. And I think there needs to be further investigation, considering the fact that the behavior has arisen again.
Very good.
Thank you. So I have a third scenario. which is an educator was convicted of a single count of driving under the influence of alcohol in February 2018. The educator had a child in the car during the offense, and the educator's blood content was 0.28%. Again, please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential.
So what is the legal driving under the influence like?
It's,
cap?
I believe it's 0.08.
0.08, and this is 0.28, you're saying?
Correct.
Roughly three times the legal limit.
Yes. And just out of curiosity, is this child that's being driven, is it, is it their own child? Is it an unaffiliated child? What are we talking in terms of the child?
Well, it's our hypothetical, so we'll give you one choice. Let's say it's the educator's child.
Okay. That's a real dilemma. So as I'm sort of thinking here, and obviously I would need a lot more facts. Given the fact that the blood alcohol content is 3 times the level, given the fact that there was a child in the car, there's serious concern about the capability of the certificated personnel. There might be a pattern of, behavior that needs to be explored. Now, if there was further information regarding, if the teacher was coming to work inebriated and there was, documentation regarding that, that'd be much quicker for me to respond to that case if I was on the commission. But still, I think having issues around substances for me is a serious concern. So I would, pursue that case in that situation.
Okay. We have 2 more scenarios. This one is another area that is not infrequently facing the committee. A male teacher appears before the Committee of Credentials and admits that he has taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation out of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee of Credentials complaining of the teacher's behavior. And for purposes of this scenario, assume the child is in high school.
Mm-hmm. I just think that it's a very serious lack of judgment to be engaging with students outside the classroom in that fashion, to be exchanging texts, to be engaging, especially not that this would change my decision, but between men and women, I think there's a power differential between the teacher and the student that needs to be addressed here. So I would definitely have this case reviewed by the commission.
Very good. We have one last one, Commissioner Klatt.
All right, the last one. Please consider a situation in which most members of the Committee of Credentials feel differently than you do as to the recommendation of discipline. So if you were going to come forward with a recommendation, what would happen if only one member agreed with you and the other 5 members opposed your recommendation? How would you handle that situation?
I don't remember the exact voting procedures by the commission, but I would attempt to state my case in a logical, reasonable manner. I would hopefully want it on the record that I might have voted for this situation, whereas others voted against, so that it would be documented there. But ultimately, we're a commission that has diverse viewpoints, where people have differences in perspective and expertise and understanding of each situation. So after, explaining my rationale and my logic, if the commission does not agree with me, I would let it go.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are all the questions we have.
Okay.
Mr. Fernando, thank you so much for your answers and your thoughtful processes. Do you have any other questions of us? We indicated the process we're going to follow, which is to deliberate and then recommend to the commission on Friday the appointment of the interviewees today. Anything else?
No, I really actually enjoyed the scenarios. They were very, very interesting, and so it was a interesting process, and so thank you for those questions.
Well, just imagine 3 days every month for an entire year of those questions.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I realize it's difficult to just sit down and answer complex questions on the spot, and
Sure.
your answers are very good. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for your interest in the committee, and we'll certainly be back in touch with you once the commission makes its decision.
Okay. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So I would entertain a motion to, with regard to whether we appoint Mr. Fernando as an alternate school board member.
I would make that or motion.
I would second.
Okay.
Commissioner King's motion.
I thought he did a wonderful job with the questions and sounded like an experienced committee member to me, actually. So, we're fortunate. We have a school board member on the commission. There is legislation to expand the ability of getting that school board input, which we can support and hopefully pass. But in the absence of that, to have somebody of this quality backing up, Mr. Wu, our current member, I think it would be beneficial. So all in favor of the recommendation to appoint Ruxan Fernando as alternate school board member indicate by saying aye. Aye. None opposed. So we will make that recommendation to the commission on Friday. And we have one more position. This is also an alternate position of a secondary teacher, one of the statutorily designated positions. We have one candidate for this position, and it is Kevin Thompson. So can we contact Mr. Thompson?
And then there's the secondary school teacher questions.
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, this is Kristen with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Is this Kevin Thompson?
Yes, this is Kevin.
Hi, Kevin. I'm here with the ad hoc committee, and I'm going to turn you over to our chair, and we'll begin your interview process.
Excellent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson. My name is Michael Cooney. I am chairing the ad hoc committee, whose task is to interview various applicants like yourself for positions on our committee of credentials. Have you had a chance to review the duties of the committee?
I did, Michael.
Okay, great. We have a few questions to ask you, and just invite you to ask any questions of us before we start, either as to our process or the committee itself.
I guess I'd like just a little bit more information about this process right now that we're going through.
Okay, so we will deliberate after we conduct our interview with you, and we will make a recommendation to the full commission this week on Friday, and the commission will consider our recommendation, make a decision, and then you and candidates for other positions on the committee will all be notified.
Okay.
And
I think that was the only point I needed clarification on.
We're trying to fill our backup group with qualified people, so that in the event that a committee member is unable to continue, we have someone who is qualified and ready to step in. And so it's for that alternate position that we're speaking with you today.
Yes, I really think I could help you out with that.
Okay, great. So my fellow commissioners, Bonnie Klatt and Kevin Kung, are here with me, and they will pose some questions to you, as will I, and give you a final chance to make any comments or ask any questions.
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner Klatt.
All right. Good afternoon. We'll start with an easy one. Are you currently a full-time certificated classroom teacher in a public secondary school with not less than 5 years of classroom experience?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Kung.
The Committee of Credential meets 3 full days per month, with a 4th partial day for preparation. The committee reviews educator misconduct cases to determine whether to recommend discipline on an educator's license. Do you believe you can make this time commitment and review the subject matter?
Yes, I can make the time commitment and review the subject matter.
Thank you.
Tell us why you're interested in serving on the committee.
That's a good question. So I'm very interested in serving on the committee. I've always had an interest in law and ed code and politics and so on and so forth. I've taught for 14 years at high school level and also the community college. I did my doctorate in educational leadership at USC, and that gave me kind of a piece of the broader picture. I also served as an administrator for 5 years, so got to deal with teacher discipline and classified evaluations during that time period. So I feel that experience would lend myself to helping the commission in reviewing the various situations.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Commissioner Klatt.
Another, I think, simple question. Do you know any of the current members who sit on the Committee of Credentials or on the Commission on Teacher Credentialing?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kung.
What strengths or qualities do you feel you possess that would be assets in serving on the Committee of Credentials?
I think understanding of parliamentary procedure. I also served on a bond oversight committee for 6 years. Vice chair.
Let me interrupt just a second, Kevin. It appears you're fading in and out. I'm not sure if that's on your end or just the connection. Can you hear us all right?
I can.
Okay, there we heard you very clearly. So maybe it's just a question of speaking directly into your phone.
Okay. So I was saying that I have an understanding. I served for 6 years as the vice chair for a bond oversight committee of a school district in San Diego County. So I understand how the meeting process operates. And can you repeat the question, Commissioner?
What strengths or qualities you feel you possess that would be assets in serving the Committee on Credentials?
Thank you. So the parliamentary procedure piece that I mentioned, also an understanding of the education code. I am also very aware of how to deal with confidential situations. I have experience working with teacher and classified unions, so the idea of due process, which is an important component of reviewing the incidents, would come into play. And also just my background in government. At the community college level, I teach California government and politics, so understanding the laws of our state.
Okay. The next phase of our questions is to pose to you several scenarios that are fairly commonly presented to the committee, and then the committee, of course, makes its recommendations to the full commission, whether discipline is to be applied or not. So in each of these scenarios, the question to you is, would you be inclined to pursue the matter of some disciplinary action or close the case as not justifying that?
Okay.
Okay. The first is a petty theft scenario, and the educator has 3 convictions for petty theft in 1997, 1998, and 1999, respectively. On each of these occasions, the amount taken was less than $100. How would you proceed?
Well, I would want to see what that person has done to be in question. I would also want to know what steps they took after those charges, if they've been rehabilitated and made amends and are no longer doing anything. So I would want to look at what has happened since those incidents.
Okay. Commissioner Klatt?
Same scenario, but would your decision be different if there were additional theft convictions in 2017 and 2018?
Oh, yes, absolutely. With the additional convictions, I would definitely advocate pursuing action.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a different scenario. That is, an educator was convicted of a single count of driving under influence of alcohol in February 2018. The educator has a child in the car during the offense, and the educator's blood alcohol content was 0.28%. Again, please discuss whether you close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential.
I would recommend discipline.
Could you elaborate as to what concerns you about that scenario?
Well, obviously, the blood alcohol content concerns me. The idea that a child was in the car concerns me. And then also the current nature of that situation concerns me.
Okay, good. Next scenario. We have a male teacher appearing before the committee admitting that he's taken one of his female students, let's assume a high school student, to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life, and the student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the committee complaining of the teacher's behavior.
Oh. And you can't say if the teacher's district is involved at this point?
No, in many cases before the committee, there has been a separate process at the district level. But the committee nonetheless doesn't have that process to take into account for licensing purposes. So consider it as if you're a member of the committee and that's the scenario.
Okay, I would go with what's the option if I don't pursue action?
Well, the committee can and does vote not to take action on a credential in some instances, and so that is an option available to you in this scenario. We're interested in what factors lead you one way or the other.
Okay. So for this one, I would lean to not taking action. I feel that with the information that you provided, it really would be a matter for the school district to investigate. And the reason why you didn't say anything about child abuse or anything like that, I do have concerns with the teacher transporting the child and texting, but I would say that's a case that should be investigated by the school and the school district.
Okay. One last scenario. Commissioner Klatt.
Okay. Could you please consider a situation if you were bringing a recommendation to the Committee of Credentials and one member agreed with you, but the other 5 members opposed your recommendation? How would you handle that situation?
So I would want to know where everybody stood, so why there was one who was supporting the same opinion I had and why the others disagreed. And ultimately, as a commission, we need to work together. We're not necessarily going to agree on every single case, so I would take what my colleagues felt and respect that and move on.
Those are our questions, Mr. Thompson, and they're brief, but I think very indicative of your thought process in those situations. We could talk a lot longer about it, but I think that's sufficient for our purposes. So as I said, we will deliberate today on a recommendation to the commission for the alternate position, and then you would be notified after the commission acts on our recommendation this Friday.
Okay.
Anything
thank you.
further? I want to be sure we've answered any questions you have remaining.
Yeah, I want to thank you for considering me. Like I said, I have a great interest in education policy. My parents were teachers. My wife is a teacher, and this is in my blood. And I feel this is a way that I can contribute additionally to our state.
Well, we certainly believe you're qualified to do that, and we'll pass along our thinking to the commission and appreciate your interest in the position and your time today.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye. Dr. Brazil?
Again, I think both candidates were very strong candidates. I think, again, the willingness to work as a group, the willingness to commit the time and effort. I don't mean to hound that to death here, but it really is. It's very important because the level of work or the amount of work that then is distributed amongst the rest of the committee when someone does not attend in a complete session, it really does burden everyone. And so that would be my I don't see any reason why any of those individuals couldn't serve. And again, I thank you for your allowing me to sit through this. I don't by any means wish to judge or to sway you in any way. I appreciate the fact that I can now report to the committee and share that the process, what it was like, and very thorough, and that you truly are committed to sending individuals to protect children and teachers and credential holders, but also to recognize the fact that we as a committee do some amazing work and have quite a bit on our plate, so we appreciate that.
And to that end, we have very much appreciated your presence here and the time you commit on top of all the other time you commit, you and your committee, and it's an invaluable service to us. There's no way we could get through what we have to do without your recommendations on all those cases, and so it's in our own best interest to review and send along as many good candidates as apply.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Okay, we have one piece of business remaining, and that is whether we recommend to the full commission as an alternate for the secondary teacher position, Kevin Thompson. Any comments, Commissioner Klatt?
I would move to recommend Mr. Thompson as an alternate.
And I will second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of recommending Kevin Thompson as the secondary teacher position candidate alternate indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right. I think that concludes the business of the ad hoc committee. If commissioners have nothing further, Ms. Kendall, anything further from you? No. Thank you all for your time today, and I'll look forward to making these recommendations on our behalf to the commission on Friday. The meeting's adjourned.